Hey, friends, welcome to Living in His Purpose podcast. So, today I want to talk to you about something maybe a little off topic. I don't know, maybe it's something a little personal. Last Tuesday, I live in a small town in southwest Missouri, and we had a pretty big storm come through the whole area. And in our town and the surrounding little towns, we completely lost power. And some of us were days without power. My experience was 2.5 days. Thankfully, the storm itself wasn't extremely devastating. It was to some neighborhoods. I'm not going to minimize that. But the biggest part was that it knocked the power out for 2.5 days. Now, I was at work an hour away when it hit, and all I knew was I have a lot of trees around my house. And if we had winds coming out of the west at 80 miles an hour, I was a little concerned about my little house. Now, I had then lost power, so I had no way of, accessing the little camera that we get, thinking that's going to give us some relief that we know what's going on. I didn't have that ability because I didn't have internet and I didn't have power to the house. And most importantly, I wasn't able to check on my puppy, Charlotte. I didn't know if the trees had fallen down and there was a hole in the ceiling, and I didn't know if I should become panicking or not. Now, I had hours to figure it out, so I did figure out some things, which was good, I guess. I would have rather been home, but we can't always have what we want. Now, so I had 2.5 days, and I had to make sure that the food in the fridge didn't go bad. It's a lot of money in there. You know how expensive groceries are these days. I had to figure out what to eat without cooking because I never got the stove switched over to a gas stove. And I had to make sure that I was staying safe. Now, that was all the practical part, but the emotional part, that really caught me off guard. So there were moments that I realized how alone I felt and how much I rely on technology for comfort, and how loud the quiet really is when you can't flip a switch to change it. Now, there were some positive things. I went to bed earlier. When you don't have electricity, you don't stay up late. That cleaning out the fridge task that I've been putting off, it finally got done. And my electricity bill is going to be lower next month. And lastly, you can have a nice little dinner by candlelight. But during this time when there was no electricity, nothing to occupy my time, I was able to think about some things and notice some things that I hadn't in a while. Now, the storm wasn't just outside. Going through this alone was hard. The silence in the house felt really loud. There was no hum from the refrigerator, no podcast or music playing in the background, no phone charging going on. And on the first day, storms kept running through the area. There wasn't enough light to even read. I had to use a flashlight to do the paperwork that I thought I was, being smart on getting accomplished. Now, what I realized is I lean on technology for company more than I thought. I fill the quiet with noise so I don't feel the stillness. And in that stillness, God began showing me something. And I know that I'm not alone in this. I know this is a problem in our first world country, but this is what God showed me. He has given us many natural gifts to help us feel grounded, peaceful, and connected. So I started to put these things together, and I saw how easily our thoughts can spiral when we don't have distractions. My mind kept going to the worst case scenario. I had to keep reminding myself, I can get in my car and drive 2 towns over and get what I need. It wasn't the end of the world. It even led to frustrations and some self-pity. So there was a lot of mind work that went on when you didn't have electricity. Who would have thought? But this is when I realized that this was more about power lines, and it was a lot more about my mindset. And that's why I want to walk with you some things that God placed in this world around us, not as just beautiful background, but as tools to help us reset our nervous systems, our thoughts, and our souls. First of all, so there's 6 things here, 6 ways that we can use God's nature to help us stay calm. Put your hands in the dirt. Okay, let's start with gardening. So what I ended up doing on the second day, because we actually had sunshine on that day, was get down in the dirt. I got all my beautiful flowers planted, and that always feels wonderful. And if you've never planted flowers before, go to Walmart, get a pot, get some potting soil and a beautiful flower, water it once a week, put it in the right lighting, and you will feel so good. But did you know that there's a friendly little bacteria in soil called Mycobacterium vaccae? So just being around this little bacteria, increases our serotonin. It helps boost our mood and calms anxiety. So all those little boys that go out and play in the dirt, they need it. They need to calm themselves. They need that. And science backs this up. But I like to think that God just planted peace right into the dirt. In Genesis 2:15, it says, God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. He didn't just create a garden, he placed us in it. And that rhythm of working with the earth was designed to bring us life. And this is, once again, an example of how everything that God puts in his word is intentional. Whether or not we know the reasons, he has a reason. And I'm excited that I live in a time where learning the nitty-gritty about some of the science behind some of the little things that he did, like tell us to work the earth, that I'm here to experience that. Okay, second thing I thought about was grounding. Now, I've talked about grounding before way back in episode number 17. That was a while ago. We should talk about that again. Walking barefoot outside might sound a little silly as we're all grown up. We think shoes are sophisticated, but it's actually really powerful. So the earth carries a mild negative charge. And when we connect to it, i.e., put your feet on the grass, when we connect to it, it can reduce inflammation, lower stress hormones, and even help us sleep better. In Psalm 24, God says, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. The very ground beneath your feet belongs to God, and it's capable of grounding you, not only physically, but emotionally. Number 3, this is something that I've started implementing personally, and it's something I kind of recently heard of, but makes complete sense to me. Looking up. What a simple tool, right? So looking up. And it's simply looking up. During this outage, I spent some time outside just looking up. When we lift our eyes to the sky, it actually calms our nervous system. It relaxes your brain and softens that anxiety. And then when you're looking up, turning your head slowly side to side helps reset your body. And there's a favorite song that I had growing up, and it comes from Psalm 121. And it starts, I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Looking up has always reminded God's people where their help comes from. And sometimes peace can just begin with a glance up toward heaven. Okay, number 4, this is probably one of my favorites, petting our pets. Now, I wasn't completely alone throughout the storm. I had Charlotte with me, and she is a very, very important part of my life. But did you know that petting a dog or a cat releases oxytocin? And you're like, so what does that mean? Isn't that something you get when you're pregnant and breastfeeding? Yes, it does. But it also is in the rest of us. And this is what it does for us. It helps us form strong bonds with others. It leads us to feelings of trust and security. It's a hormone that can be described as when we feel like we're cuddling. It makes you feel more relaxed. It gives you the ability to connect with others emotionally, and it encourages generosity, compassion, and cooperation. Isn't that fascinating how God has put into every cell of our body a hormone that can do so much good? Petting our pets also lowers cortisol and even decreases blood pressure. Our pet's presence brings emotional regulation without saying a single word. And in Proverbs 12, it says, the righteous care for the needs of their animals. It's no surprise that God wired comfort into the soft fur and the steady presence of his creatures. They're not just cute, they're calming. And I was so grateful to have Charlotte next to me through this whole ordeal. Number 5. Talking to flowers. Okay, this one might sound a little out there, but science proves this. I recently saw a video on Instagram and had to see if this was true. Are you ready? So science shows that flowers respond to sound. They can grow differently when exposed to certain vibrations. And some studies even show that they thrive when they're spoken to, especially with gentle, high-pitched voices. And in Matthew 6, he says, "And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow. They don't labor or spin." And Jesus is pointing to the flowers as a picture of how we are cared for. They don't strive, and neither should we. Sometimes just noticing beauty or even speaking kindly to what's growing softens our hearts too. Number 6, bird song before sunrise. Okay, this is one of my favorite facts that I've recently learned. Did you know that when birds start singing before dawn, their songs actually trigger plants to prepare for photosynthesis? That's right. God has orchestrated a pre-sunrise worship service where the birds literally help creation wake up and receive what it needs. And on the first day without power, I was really able to hear this, being able to leave my bedroom windows open. But the second morning, the neighbors had gotten themselves a generator, and I couldn't hear this anymore. In Psalm 96, it says, "Let the fields be jubilant, and everything in them, let all the trees of the forest sing for joy." In Lamentations, it's very familiar to us. His mercies are new every morning. Creation wakes up with worship, and so can we. And just to stay on topic, you don't have to have music to worship. Our voices, when I didn't have power, it was just me talking. Our voices are all that God wants to hear. He wants to hear what's in our hearts. And when we pour that out, it makes him happy. And then finally, gratitude, being thankful. It's more than a really good habit. Gratitude, which God has encouraged us from the beginning of time to practice, it reduces inflammation. It improves sleep, lowers depression, and increases joy. But more than that, it recenters us in God's goodness. It shifts our perspective from what's missing to what's present. In Philippians, we hear, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving." Gratitude doesn't change your circumstances. It changes you. And that's the starting point for peace. So even though the 2.5 days started out a little bit rough, it was kind of exciting because I didn't know what was going to happen, but it was mostly rough. It could have been worse, but it was rough enough. I don't want to go through that again anytime soon. It did end really well. I was able to really have time to think about how God built restoration into the world around us, all without electricity. So often we're searching for peace in new strategies or self-improvement plans, when the very rhythms he designed are inviting us back to calm and clarity. And yet, so many of us struggle to access those rhythms because our thoughts are tangled up in fear, urgency, or confusion. And if you find yourself in that place, and I was just there, you're not just overwhelmed, but you're unsure how to come back to yourself. That's where coaching can help. And let me tell you, I did some self-coaching during that time. It's not about fixing yourself. It's about aligning your thoughts with the truth of how God made you. You are not stuck. You just need a reset. Now, if this is something that you're looking for, in my show notes, I do have a link for just a one-time session of coaching. And let's see together how to get you reset. Okay, friends, when the lights go out in your life, whether literally or emotionally, I hope you remember this. God already placed sources of healing and comfort all around you. You don't have to earn them. You just have to notice. Step outside, put your hands in the dirt, put your feet in the ground, listen to the birds, speak kind words, breathe deep, and thank God for what's already there. In Isaiah, he says, "You will go out in joy and be led forth in peace." And remember, you are not alone. You are held even in the dark because God loves you. Now have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.